Naomi Judd was one half of the famous duo, the Judds. When the news came out that she had died in 2022, the whole world stopped. Perhaps even more shocking was the way she died. But what if the news stories didn't really show everything? What did really happen when the doors were shut? What did Naomi take with her to the grave? As shocking facts came out, people had more and more questions. A private goodbye letter, a scary family background, an autopsy report that shocked fans, and sad new information about the house where Naomi Judd died. It's not what you think it is, but what you're about to learn will change the way you always think about Naomi Judd. Naomi Judd was famous for more than just country music. She had been through a lot, and was a mother. She also wore many caps and hid her scars very well. Her voice and the voice of her daughter Winona filled the lives of millions of people. It wasn't just the Judds, it was about love, being strong, and getting a second chance. But Naomi kept a storm from everyone, even though she was famous and walked the red carpet. When she died in 2022, it wasn't just sad people felt. There were a lot of questions about it, like why it happened at that time, and why there was quiet afterward. There was also drama and emotional weight afterward. Fans didn't understand how someone who looked like she was in the midst of a moment of glory, as she was about to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, could be secretly falling apart. What went wrong? What clues were missed? How did everything fall apart so quickly? This video pulls back the curtain on Naomi's last chapter, which was marked by struggles with her mental health, problems with her family, and sad discoveries. It's not just about how she died. We're going to ride through her life and see everything she had to go through to live. Here we see exclusive information, footage that has never been seen before, and emotional stories from people who were there when she was dying. Yet we need to look at what led her to her last moment before we can understand it. How a country music star became famous. Naomi Judd used to be Diana Ellen Judd, from Ashland, Kentucky. Before she became the beautiful, angry, and award-winning half of country music's most popular mother-daughter team, Naomi Judd was just loved by many. A girl from a small town, with big dreams, a rough past, and a child on her hip. Naomi's childhood wasn't like something out of a fairy tale. It was a mess, and lots of people were hurt. Her youth was hard, and full of sadness. Her brother died suddenly at age 17 of leukemia, and her family had a lot of problems, which taught her to be tough early on. She had been a single mom to 2 girls by the time she was in her early 20s. It's hard for Winona and Ashley to make ends meet. She didn't have a husband, or a college degree. She had only a dream, and a strong will to follow it through. They moved a lot. First they went to California, then back to Kentucky, and finally to Tennessee. She worked as a nurse and a waiter. In order to take care of her children, she did any job that came up. She kept a voice in her pocket that not many people knew about. Her only goal was to take care of her children. However, she had her eyes on something else at the same time. Music was her escape during those long, scary years. Winona, her daughter, had strong, powerful singing vocals, which showed she loved music and performing like Naomi did. They quickly started writing their own songs, which is how they became known as the Judds. The world fell in love almost overnight. They kept going even after years went by. But things changed for them in the 1980s. They were signed to RCA Victor Records, and had 14 #1 hits and 5 Grammys, while working their way up in the music business. That's the kind of fame that doesn't just make someone a star. They were the stuff of tales. Songs like Mama, He's Crazy, and Love Can Build a Bridge did more than just make it to the top of the charts. A lot of people in the United States just couldn't get enough of them, because they could be played over and over again. You might be wondering where Ashley was while they were getting popular. She grew up out of the spotlight, and had a pretty normal life. Naomi didn't just walk the walk when it came to showing what a mother should be like in public. She paved the way for women in country music. There was something bold and appealing about her that shone through in every interview and show she was at. But as we found out later, being brave can be very dangerous. Naomi shocked her fans when she announced her retirement in 1991, when she was at the height of her fame. Wow, that was a surprise. It turned out that the singer got hepatitis C, a blood-borne disease that can kill, while she was working as a nurse. Getting sick kept her off the stage, but her fans still loved her. Now the Judds could no longer work together. Because Winona started her single business so quickly, her first record, Winona, was a huge success. It went platinum and #1 on the Billboard Country Albums chart. She and Winona got back together over the years for tours and TV shows, but Naomi was changing. Even though it wasn't clear from the headlines, it was there, behind the stage lights. Something much darker was slowly taking root. And what began as shadows quickly turned into something that could not be ignored. Naomi's mental health problems. When Naomi Judd stopped being famous in 1991, most of her fans thought that was the end of her art. The world didn't see Naomi's biggest fight, which she kept secret for years, was not with hepatitis C, but with her own mind. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, it began in a quiet way. Naomi felt like something heavy was on her, but she couldn't put her finger on it. At first, it was stress. Then there were terror attacks. She also had a hard time getting out of bed because it felt like she was pulling herself through wet concrete. She thought she was tired from acting for years, but it turned out to be a deep, long-lasting depression that wouldn't go away with care. The truth hit everyone so hard when she finally told them on the record. There was more to Naomi's sadness than that. She had been told she had bipolar illness, severe sadness, anxiety, and panic disorder. It wasn't a light case either. This was the kind of mental sickness that holds on tight and doesn't let go easy. It's also the type that doesn't always ask for help. Naomi took off the mask in her 2016 autobiography, River of Time, My Descent into Depression and How I Came Out with Hope. She talked honestly about the sadness. She wrote, "When I get home I won't leave the house for weeks. I couldn't move at all, and didn't know how to ask for help. She couldn't even leave her room some days. Other times she'd smile for talk shows, just to break down in tears as soon as the cameras stopped moving." Many different kinds of drugs were given to her, from mood stabilizers to antidepressants and anxiety pills, but they only worked for a short time. It got worse, so she tried treatment, but it kept going back and forth. When Naomi's outpatient treatment wasn't working, she went to a mental ward. She was desperate for a break from the thoughts that would not leave her mind. Over the years, she had to deal with a lot of pain, public attention, unresolved stress from her youth, and even the pressure of being Naomi Judd. From then on, she cut herself off from everyone, even Winona and Ashley, the two people she loved the most. In public, they seemed like a close-knit family, but behind the scenes, they were having problems with communication and mistakes that made them less close. One issue that kept coming up was that Ashley always felt left out. She called herself the forgotten Judd. She also talked honestly about her childhood, which she called chaotic and unstable, as she moved around a lot, going to different boarding schools and being emotionally ignored at times. Naomi did this not because she wanted to hurt anyone, but because she was chasing a dream and dealing with her own problems at the same time. Ashley had to live a more normal life than the rest of her family because she went to the University of Kentucky to study French, anthropology, and women's studies before becoming an actor in Los Angeles. She was happy that she had finally found her own way. Over time, she made a strong name for herself in Hollywood, different from the country music success her mom and sister had achieved. While Naomi and Winona were on tour buses across the country earning Grammys, Ashley had to deal with the effects of her family's fame from afar and had to find her own way to heal. She writes about all of this in her book, All That Is Bitter and Sweet. Since Naomi was having personal problems and her family was having problems, she felt alone in a room full of people. This loneliness made things worse. The state of her health wasn't good either. Even though she no longer had hepatitis C, it still affected her immune system, her energy, and her sense of self-worth. She had constant pain, tiredness, and brain fog, and they all made her feel worse. She once said that being depressed felt like, Naomi tried a lot of different methods, both medical and non-medical, and she wrote about all of them in her notebook. In spite of everything, she felt thankful. There were good weeks and even months from time to time. She would go for walks, events, and meet up with people she had planned to. But the shadow always came back just when things were getting better. She didn't give up though. That was how she did things. Break, get back up, repair, rinse and repeat. It was even harder because of the shame. People always thought she would be in great shape and sparkle because she was famous and a couture country music star. In that world, there wasn't much room for her to be weak. Naomi always had a smile on her face, even when it hurt. There were times when her heart hurt as she sang the songs. It made her feel bad every time someone called her amazing. She wasn't always sure if she wanted to keep going. She did though, she did it for years. Until she could no longer. At the end of April 2022, Naomi Judd had lived through fights that no one else had seen. Some were fought on big stages with stadium lights and women wearing glitter. Others were quiet, hard to see and never stopped. By the spring of 2022 though, she was tired, not of living, but of being hurt. And on a normal sunny April morning, she finally gave up. The date was April 30th, 2022, a Saturday. The Judds were going to be welcomed into the Country Music Hall of Fame in just one day. This should have been a time to celebrate everything Naomi had done to build a life with Winona and everything she had been through. But awards that big couldn't fix what was broken inside her. That day, Naomi was at home on her private land in Leaps Fork, Tennessee, which is about 40 minutes southwest of Nashville. Naomi had always dreamed of a house tucked away in the trees. Some quiet time and lots of room, but the quiet had turned out to be a bad thing for her. It let her be alone with her thoughts, but it also gave her privacy. Ashley, her younger daughter, came over that morning, as she always did. The link between Naomi and Ashley had gotten stronger over the years, even though they had had problems in the past. Ashley knew how her mom felt, so she knew how to read the silence and look out for any odd signs. But something didn't feel right that morning. Naomi wasn't really in the mood to talk, and she wasn't bright or sharp like she sometimes is. Even when things are tough. Ashley later said that she was particularly quiet and shy. Even though that kind of emotional distance wasn't new, it felt heavy that day. Something was off, but it was hard to pin down. Ashley also said Naomi was unhappy with her body because she would pace around the kitchen and say things like, "I don't want to be here anymore." Following some time, Naomi became calmer and told her daughter why she had chosen to stay living despite everything she had been through. She told Ashley, "Mom, you don't have to worry about me. Okay. At one point, Naomi asked her daughter in a low voice, "Will you stay with me?" She stayed close, and the two of them talked for a while. Before Naomi picked up and went to her room. He then left the room for a moment when he heard a knock. She went upstairs to answer the door and let her mom know that a close family friend had come to see them. It didn't take long. It wasn't even far, but when she got back down, she saw the scariest thing she had ever seen. She came home to find her mother lying on the floor. She had used a gun to shoot herself. Everything turned upside down at that moment. As soon as Ashley saw that her mother was almost dead, she ran to her side and with her voice shaking, called 911. Later it was proven that Naomi was barely alive when Ashley found her. She did everything she could to save her life. She held her, tried to make her feel better, and just was there. For almost 30 minutes, even as it became clear what was really going on. Ashley talked to her mom and told her, "It's okay. I know how much you've been upset." Also, she said that they both took deep breaths. She also told her mom how much she loved her. It was okay to leave. That terrible event didn't end with the morning. Since then, Ashley has said in a clear and painful way that I found her. "I'm going through both loss and stress." Soon after, cops and paramedics showed up, but it was too late. Judd was no longer there. The well-known country singer died at the age of 76. Later it was proven that the person killed themselves with a gun to the head. Someone had written and left a goodbye letter nearby. Even though the whole thing was never made public, family members said it fit with someone who had been in unbearable pain. She wasn't just a woman who had bad days, she had been in a lot of pain for years, the kind that would swallow people whole. The bright smile, red hair and bright light were seen by everyone. But all of that was hiding a woman who was fighting darkness that no one could see. After her sad death, The truth about her death had to be told to her friends and the public in some way, if only to give those who loved and adored her peace of mind. An autopsy was done, and the results were exactly what Ashley had told everyone. Naomi Judd had killed herself with a gun and died. All of that was enough to end a long-running story in country music and the rest of the world. But the results were more than that. The toxicology results showed that she had a number of prescription drugs in her body. These drugs are often used to treat bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her family already knew this. They were with her through all of it, from trips to the doctor and treatment to hospital stays and taking drugs. But for most people, they were just news that they didn't fully understand. Naomi talked about mental illnesses and tried to get more people to know about them even when she was still alive. Just because she was taking those drugs didn't mean she wasn't trying. In fact, it showed the opposite. Naomi had been trying to stay alive the whole time. But some fights are just tougher than others. What happened next and how people reacted? Following that, fans were confused for several days. How could someone who is so famous, successful, and close to getting the biggest award of their career be in so much pain? But Naomi's friends and people who had read her autobiography weren't as shocked. They knew it wasn't just a bad day. They knew that what she did was the result of years of effort. After that, Ashley spoke out, not only to share her pain, but also to teach others about trauma, mental illness, and how to be kind to someone who is suffering in quiet. She talked about the time she saw her mother give up the ghost while holding her. She didn't show such weak feelings just to make the news. She did it because it was important. When everything around them fell apart, the show didn't stop. To the point, Winona and Ashley went to the Country Music Hall of Fame event as planned, just one day after Naomi Judd's sad death. Naomi was admitted posthumously with her daughter Winona as part of the Judds, one of the most famous country music pairs. Still, Winona and Ashley were there, dressed in black, standing on that stage. Their eyes were heavy with sadness, and their voices were shaking but steady. Ashley spoke to the crowd and said, she was honest about how painful it was to lose their mother and how important it is to see mental illness as a serious problem that shouldn't be ignored. Even though she was crying, Winona spoke of her sadness and thanks by saying, "Even though my heart is broken, I will continue to sing." She promised to keep her mother's music alive, and both fans and people who were there felt very strongly about that promise. After that, both sisters read Psalm 23 to end their speech. It wasn't just the sadness that hurt the most though, it was the right time. Naomi had stuck with it for decades, through fame, sadness, and times when she was depressed. She left the day before the world was going to honor her. In the days that followed, both women kept speaking out about mental health, sharing what they've been through, and pushing others to get help. But just when you thought things couldn't get worse, life hit you with another surprise. The problems that came up after Naomi died. It is normal for the cops to be called to the scene of any quick or strange death. Naomi's death was no different. The family didn't know this, and no one thought to tell them, but every second, word and breath they took during those grief-filled minutes was being taped. As part of their job, the police wrote down everything about Ashley, including how she was feeling, who she talked to, and how she tried to keep herself together as her world fell apart. It was all written down. But this is where things went wrong. They didn't just put those records away, they were now public records, which meant that anyone in the media, on the internet, or even strangers could see them. That's exactly what took place. Ash broke down in a way you wouldn't expect when she found out. In a split second, she went from being in full body shock to being in severe anxiety. She was no longer just a daughter in grief. She thought that people who had no business being in her pain were watching, analyzing, and judging her. People all over the world could now see one of the weakest times in her life when she lost her mom. Later, she said it felt like it was ripped open again. She tried to be strong and keep the family together while she dealt with her own loss. But this was different. This was a total invasion of her privacy and left her open to harm. The public was now interested in her private tragedy. When that happened, she and her family chose to go to court on their own. Even though the Judd family was already very sad, they had to switch to fight mode. Their only wish was to be able to grieve in peace. They went to court to stop the release of the police interviews, as well as any tapes or pictures made at the scene. There are some things that are too holy to talk about, and the times right after a loved one dies, that should never be shown to the public. However, they did not know that it would not be as easy as they thought to hide the tapes and records from the public, because the law in Tennessee wasn't really on their side. A lot more than most people think is open to everyone because of the state's public records rules. At the same time that the Judds were begging for privacy and kindness, the judicial system was asking about openness and freedom of information. That's when things got fuzzy. The family wanted justice so they could keep their privacy, but the media saw a chance to make news. They swam around like sharks, eager for news and to see if sadness would win out over public attention. At one point, Naomi's family wasn't even sure they could keep the facts of her last moments secret. Some news outlets dropped their requests for pictures of Naomi on the day she died, so the family's case was thrown out after the final hearing on September 8 that same year. The story keeps getting more sad just when you think it can't get any worse. Do you remember the letter Naomi sent to say goodbye? Most of what was inside stayed secret, but what got out was shocking to everyone. One of the most shocking facts was that Naomi asked Winona not to go to her funeral. That really came as a surprise. These events caused fans and family to feel confused and sad. In what way did Winona take that? We don't know, but we do know that it would have hurt her heart. How can you grieve for your mother when her will says that you are not allowed to be at her funeral? The family was breaking up in a lot of different ways behind the scenes. Lawrence Strickland, Naomi's husband of more than 30 years, talked about her last days while crying. He remembered how quiet she was. His words were like a faraway look in her eyes that didn't feel like her. Still, he didn't see it coming. Those sisters Ashley and Winona had different reactions to the tragedy. Ashley cared more about fighting, being honest and speaking out about mental illness and what it did to them. When Anna, on the other hand, kept singing, traveling and hanging on tight to music, which was the only thing that made sense anymore, she grieved while she was moving. That wasn't the only thing that was shown. It was later made public that Naomi had fired a gun at Larry during a fight over cheating, which had been hidden in a state court documents. Yes, really, this showed that Naomi was a real person in her own right. Her singing touched many people, and it will not be forgotten quickly, even though her life was cut short. A heritage, and a cause. Naomi Judd was America's heart not only because she sang but also because she left a legacy that wasn't limited by her fame, the numbers, or even the bad things that happened to her while she was living. Naomi had already become a force a long time before her last days made news. She wasn't only much older than her country music peers, but she also brought her daughter with her. This helped Winona become the famous singer she is today, especially in a field where women were often left out. Naomi stepped up, took the lead and made way for the next generation of female country stars, who are now happy to stand on the ground she helped build. What she did behind the scenes and off stage may have been her most powerful act. Naomi spoke out about her mental health when most people would rather keep quiet. She wrote about it, talked about it in interviews and in front of cameras, and she took the stage and pulled back the curtain on her long fight with anxiety and depression. She didn't do all that to get sympathy or notice, you can be sure of that. She wanted to give other people a safe place to be, even though she didn't feel safe herself. People were able to be vulnerable because she was willing to be. Winona could have stopped singing after Naomi died, or she could have shut herself off from the public eye and gone into sadness. She could have done anything her mom would have wanted, but she chose to keep going. In honor of Naomi, she went on tour and sang the songs they used to sing together while standing alone under the stage lights. Ashley, who is always fighting for what's right, carried on the fight her mom started. She has spoken out about policies, schooling, and support for mental health. In Naomi's name, the sisters have supported causes and projects, working with organizations to bring attention to and money for people who are suffering in silence, like their mother used to do. And her name wasn't just passed down through her family. Thanks came in like a river after the news spread. Ruby Dee said she was one of the best people she had ever met. It was said that she loved like a warrior and sang like an angel. A wide range of artists from Casey Musgraves to Carrie Underwood also talked about how Naomi's music shaped their childhoods and fueled their journeys. Even though Naomi Judd died, her life didn't end. Her story is sad and heavy, but also full of light. That love lives on in every radio song, every fan who keeps her words close, and every person who is now brave enough to speak their truth, because she did it first. Which of her songs do you still listen to? Share your thoughts below. Please like, follow and click the bell icon on our channel so you never miss a video we post. You can see more movies like this one by clicking on the next video.